is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Dr. Mo Ibrahim is one of the most influential figures in Africa and a renowned philanthropist. A Sudanese-British businessman and mobile communications entrepreneur, Dr. Ibrahim is best known for his work through the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, which provides African leaders with incentives to promote a good governance. This week on the program, we hear from Dr. Mo Ibrahim himself as we discuss his foundation's efforts to improve the lives of Africans and his vision for the future of the continent. I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Ibrahim. I want to start with reflections on your journey so far. In 2006, you established the Mo Ibrahim Foundation with a focus on the critical importance of governance and leadership in Africa. What was your motivation in placing your focus on governance? What did you see that worried you?
Africa is a very rich continent, but Africans are poor. And the challenge for us is to understand why. When we are blessed with such a wonderful continent, why our people are poor. And the only conclusion we managed to come up with is that because of mismanagement of our resources, natural resources, human resources, mismanagement of our government and our priorities, and of course, lack of transparency and corruption. And so we thought, really, Africa should not be in need of aid or support from anybody. We need to manage our affairs much better because we can do much better. And all starts with governance, better governance. Governance is about delivering the basic public goods people need. We need rule of law, we need better education, we need health. We need to manage our natural resources transparently and well. We need to build our infrastructure. Really, this is governance. We need also to protect human rights. And this is the kind of things which, if we do, we can really move forward.
So let's broaden this conversation a little bit more, Dr. Ibrahim, because every 2 years, the Ibrahim Index on African Governance provides data on how well governance in Africa is performing. How well have African countries fared? What should we still be worried about? And what should we be optimistic about?
Let me start with what I'm worrying about. I'm worrying about the democracy recession. We see really proliferation of these military rules in Africa. People come to power and refuse to leave for so many years. We have some of the longest serving presidents in the world are all in Africa. Really, things are going back, unfortunately, in that area. Parallel to that, we see closing of space for the civil society. It is so funny that many African governments now dictated and ruled that it is illegal for any civil society, any foundation in Africa to receive financial support from any international foundation or anybody. It's so ridiculous when the same governments go around begging for money from those same donors. Why is it criminal for civil society to receive funding from international donors when the government is only very happy to receive the same funding from the same donors? It's ridiculous. And they call them foreign agents, as if when you receive funding, then you become an agent. Then all our leaders in Africa are foreign agents because they all receive foreign funding. You can see how ridiculous is that situation. But this situation really need to change. We need to offer more space. Civil society is not an enemy of the government.
Right.
It is there to help the government improve what they're doing. We applaud the government when she does well. We criticize the government when she does bad. And people should appreciate that. That is really needed to do. So this human rights and civil space for civil society really is very, very important. Secondly, we have a big problem with the debt. Debt in Africa is becoming a problem. And the reason for that is the very expensive interest rates we are forced to pay on our debt. We have to pay what they call Africa risk premium. And it's so ridiculous. Rich countries can borrow at very low interest rates. The poor, not only in Africa, poor countries in general have to borrow in excessively high interest rates. We are actually engineering the default of those countries because we are saddling them with debt, which some of our countries have to pay half their budget in order to service the debt. How much is left for investment, for education, for health? Very little. That situation unsustainable. Then we have this food insecurity because of the war in Ukraine, which is nothing to do with us actually. It's unfortunate and we do sympathize, but the impact on us is too much. The increase in fuel prices, the interest rates in general were high. The dollar was too strong, which meant our debt service became even higher. So there is a lot of things which are squeezing us in Africa at the moment. We need to avoid conflicts. We need peace in order to build our societies. You look around Africa today, how many conflicts you can see? Everywhere you see conflicts. You have around you have problems in Somalia, you have problems in Sudan, we have problems in Chad, we have problems in Tigray, we had, I mean, all these conflicts. Libya, we have conflicts in Libya. In the Sahel, we have problems in West Africa. All these conflicts, armed conflicts, destroys our infrastructure, destroys our development. We need peace. Peace is very important. And to achieve peace, we need to deal with our people in a fair way. We stop marginalizing minorities. We need to pay attention to the requirement of people. And the mentality of winner takes all doesn't work anymore. We need to hug your opponents. That's what we need to do.
So you talk passionately about the need for good governance, and we're looking at some of Africa's, richest countries by resources, most times being, some of the most broken, like the DRC, like Libya, like South Sudan, like Sudan. How can we best, though, encourage African countries to embrace good governance?
It's hard work, my sister. We just need to work at it. I mean, we have a number, I have to say it, I know it is hard, but we have a number of failed states around us in Africa, unfortunately. And all of them, because of the governance model we have adopted there. What we have in South Sudan is a governance problem. What we have in North Sudan is a governance problem. Libya was broken and never put back together again. And again, you end up with militias everywhere and blackmailing the government, and there's no government in Libya. And then foreign intervention, unfortunately, is not helpful. How many fingers are there in Libya? How many foreign fingers are there? A lot of people are there. And is that helpful? No. That country should have been a very rich country. But what's happening to it? I think we need to find a way real to improve the way we govern our people. And people will not accept anything less than an inclusive, democratic government which looks after everybody fairly. That's what people need. And unless we have that, we will end up all the time with these conflicts and this infighting and say bye-bye to development. You cannot have development in a war zone. On the other hand, Africa always display some resilience.
Right.
We go from crisis to crisis, we are resilient. And We hope anyway that the new young generation of African people are coming with better behavior, with better attitude, they are more educated than our generation. And we look forward really for a future better leadership for Africa.
Right. So, but you've been looking at Africa now since 2006. So what would you say is the biggest success story from Africa in the past 10 years or so?
I think there's been great success in the areas of infrastructure. Infrastructure has developed quite a lot, actually. It's not yet there. We still have a lot to do, but that's an area which is developed. Infrastructure is not just roads. I mean, telecommunication has really moved forward. Digitalization of Africa is really moving forward at a really great speed. We also applaud the improvement on gender. Situation on gender is improving quite. Human, economic, and social rights of women are improving at a really high rate. We are coming from a very low base, by the way, so we are not there yet. But the rate of improvement is wonderful, has been one of the best developments we had. Education has improved in Africa. There are a number of positive things we see moving forward.
So it is sort of like a mixed bag, but I want to go back to the Ibrahim Index of African Governance 2022. It has some positives there, though, because it shows that more than half of Africa's population living in a country now where overall governance has improved between 2012 and 2021. What do you think? Yes, what do you think are the main challenges and opportunities for improving governance in Africa?
Development of such social media have created an ecosystem in Africa where it's difficult now for bad things to continue. Things like corruption, for example. We live in a more transparent world for the moment. Any deals, any actions are out there. And that is very important. This new transparency, etc. That's really important. I also think that the new generation coming up, and I have a lot of faith in African youth, and they constitute the majority of our population because we have very young population in Africa. And those people coming with better approach, better attitude, better understanding of what's going around them. And they are very active. Social media, they are comfortable with the digital age, with the economy. We see a lot of young entrepreneurs coming up, and that is wonderful. During my time when I was a young man, the only jobs only came from governments. You go to school, you go to university, and all your hope is to get a government job. Now, nobody wants to work for government now. People need to start their own businesses, and that's wonderful, because this is what's going to create jobs really and create prosperity. So I'm looking for all those young entrepreneurs coming forward. And I feel warm, really. I think it's wonderful. Africa also has key to the new green economy because we have at least 30% of the world reserves of all the minerals required for the green economy. What we need, if we manage that correctly, I think that will be a fantastic opportunity for us. And we need to move from just sending raw materials abroad to processing, and we need to move up the value chains because we produce a lot of stuff, but we don't process it, which is really sad.
The continent has talked about that for quite a while, Dr. Ibrahim, the whole idea of value addition, and with the coming into force of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, do you see that finally becoming a reality?
We need to act. We need to walk the talk. The problem, we talk. We know what we need to do, but we don't do it. And that is a problem. We all know that we need this common market in Africa. We need free movement of goods and people and capital in Africa, because as 54 countries, we are nowhere really, in this big world around us. But if we come together, we are 1.4 billion people, and that can be really a big force. China succeeded because it is over a billion people. It is a big market, and that was essential for success of China. If China was 54 little countries speaking different languages, with borders, with different customs, with different, do you think China would have been anywhere? No. That's a lesson we need to learn. And that's why we need to move. We need to approve and get involved in this trade agreement, the continental free trade agreements, and we're going very slow. I'm frustrated, honestly. I think we are going very slow. We need to move.
Indeed, we'll continue with this discussion in just a moment. But on that note, we are taking a short break. And when we return, we'll hear more from Dr. Mo Ibrahim. To stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. We are still in conversation with Dr. Mo Ibrahim. Dr. Ibrahim, you talked earlier about Africa's youth being, the future of the continent, the hope for the future. What are the most pressing issues, in your view, that are facing Africa's youth today?
I think the most important thing is education and training. We talk about education. We need to look hard at our education systems. Are they providing our young people with the right tools they need in order to find jobs when they finish their education? What exactly are we teaching our kids? I think we need to look again carefully at what are we teaching there, at the curriculum. What are we teaching there? Because the world has changed. We cannot continue with curriculum devised by the French or the British 100 years ago. That was a different world. It's gone. Our people now need to have different kind of skills which is suitable for employment. Our educators need to speak to business people to understand what is needed in terms of skill to our people. Also, we need more technical schools, like the German technical schools, because we need people who are able to do things, not just to write nice essays or to recite poetry and get their bachelor degrees. We cannot eat poetry, unfortunately. It is lovely, but we need first to build our continent, to build the infrastructure, to get things done. We build our telecom networks, we build our airports. That need technical skills. We need to build that technical skills and make it available to our young people. That is very important. And I think that is the #1 priority, I think of for our young people, because they need jobs. And you cannot have jobs without the right skills. And if you have the right labor force, trained and able to work, investment will come, because that's what attracts the investor to any market, is the availability of well-trained workforce. That is really is important.
So, Dr. Ibrahim, if you will permit me, I'd like to speak just a little bit about your foundation and its work on the continent, because many are aware of the Mo Ibrahim Prize. But how does the foundation's work, and particularly the Ibrahim Index on Governance, promote or impact good governance and development in Africa?
What we do is we have a research team, and which looks at how to gather the relevant data. And that is difficult, by the way, because many African countries do lack proper statistical offices, which are essential, because without data, how can you develop policies? You cannot drive a car or fly a plane without instruments in front of you to know your speed, to know your height, to know. But some of our countries actually don't collect the statistics. How would you know how to manage your health system, your education system without proper data? Anyway, so collecting data is a problem. So we partner with some 35 or so worldwide organizations who collect data in different aspects. So these are batches of data in different areas. We have agreement with all those guys. We get their all raw data, and then we try to fill in the gaps by sponsoring more survey work and people like Afroparameters, etc. And we create the largest reservoir of data on Africa by using all this data from everybody and producing also our own data to fill in the gaps. This is what we try to produce, and then we'll make it available in our portal, data portal for everybody. It's free of charge. We offer it to everybody, to academics, to politicians, to governments, to opposition, because if you want to argue or discuss whatever policies works, what doesn't work, we need to talk based on data, not just shouting at each other. We need to have conversation based on data so we can reach policy decisions based on facts, on data. And that's important. So this is the part which and that actually is the most complex and difficult project we do. It's very extensive and very hard work. The prize, on the other hand, is less work because we have a prize committee which is separate from the board. And by the way, I'm not a member of that prize committee to make sure we have a better governance ourselves. And this prize committee then meets and decide if there's a winner for the prize or what. So that's although that is more probably people know more about the prize than the index, but it's not as hard work as providing the index. Then, of course, we do a lot of commentary. Produce op-eds, produce research papers. So we try to do what we can, my sister.
All right. So I know we're coming to the end of our interview, but you're talking about it being a long-term project in helping the African continent move forward, and part of that, of course, is bridging the gap between the West and the continent. What initiatives would you say you have implemented to help bridge the gap between African countries and the rest of the world? I
mean, we work with European Union, for example. We're trying to improve because European Union happen to be very receptive to our work, trying to improve the way they work with Africa, to rationalize that work, and to understand also where we come from, because there is a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions. We try with our friends in US as well. One issue we fought very hard for was Africa's right to develop its own gas, because we have 600 million people in Africa without power. And some well-meaning people at Glasgow decided during COP, decided that they should stop funding for gas projects in Africa, which was ridiculous. And we had to explain that to people and say, look, well, we did not put this stuff up there. You guys put it up. And you continue to use gas. Actually, using half of African gas goes to Europe. And You denying our people to use our own resources when we put only 3% of this stuff over there and nothing. Anyway, so we managed also to reverse that decision together with our people who argued with us. We raising the issue of debt with all the people like IMF and other people, and people tries to understand now that this debt is not sustainable, and the interest rates Africa has to pay is just not acceptable. So we are fighting now to find a better way to improve the way we receive debt. We need to have more concessional debt from the multinationals and multilateral organizations. We also need schemes, but which the multilateral can provide some instrument which help the private sector when it lends money to Africa to reduce this huge Africa premium we have to pay now. So this area we are working also on. It's just so. Then the area of corruption, illicit financial flows. $100 billion every year leaves Africa in illicit financial flows. This unsustainable and is criminal. And we need to, just to explain to the listeners here, illicit financial flows is when multinational companies misprice products, when they shift profits. People don't pay taxes in Africa, and they shift the profit. They misprice products, and that's huge amount of money. So we're having a big argument going on now to improve the laws in Europe and United States, etc., to fill in the gaps, because this is done now illegally, and that is sad. Of course, situation is much better now because Europe understand the problem now, because countries like UK, France, etc., suddenly discovered that Starbucks, Apple, Google, etc., they are not paying taxes or enough taxes in their countries, and they are very upset about that. So they understand now the problem we had all these past years, and things hopefully are going to change now.
Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
And that's all we have time for on this edition of Talk Africa. A big thank you to our special guest, Dr. Mo Ibrahim. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation through our social media platforms on Facebook and Twitter. And you can watch this and other editions of Talk Africa on our YouTube playlist. Do join us again next week for more Talk Africa. For me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team here in Nairobi, until next time, goodbye.